He went on Joe Rogan, then killed someone 38 days later.
On the 1st of February 2024,
Oh, it's
Sheldon Johnson
recent-ish.
appeared on the Joe Rogan Experience.
I don't know who
38
that
days
is.
later, he was arrested and charged with murder. It was episode 2096,
Is that Mike
with
Sevens?
Joe Rogan,
Hey, I don't
Sheldon
like that.
Johnson, and another person named Josh Dubin. Josh had been on the podcast 6 different times before, explaining on
Dude,
an
damn,
earlier episode.
wait. They have over 1,000 episodes? 2,000? How many episodes are they on right now? Hold on. You're on 2,214 right now. That's what I see on when I looked it up. That's a lot, dude. That's a lot. That's more than One Piece, by the way. One Piece has over 1,000 episodes in it.
That he was a lawyer who worked with wrongfully convicted felons.
We're here to get the word out about wrongful convictions.
In 3 out of 6 of Josh's appearances, he'd bring these wrongful convicts to tell their story.
He spent 3 decades in jail for
I guess
murders that he didn't commit.
So when Josh brought in Sheldon Johnson, it seemed this would be another positive episode, but it quickly became apparent that Sheldon was slightly different.
I figured we'd do something a little bit different. Typically, the person sitting to my right is someone that was wrongfully convicted. Sheldon is guilty.
That's what
Sheldon had only just been released from a 25-year prison stint, but Josh had brought him on specifically as an example of someone who'd been given an unfair amount of time, believing Sheldon never deserved his 25 years in prison. Well, you can be the judge of that.
It depends.
Born 1975,
if you rob somebody, you should be lucky to get shot.
Sheldon Johnson grew up in the Martin Luther King Jr. Towers, aka a poverty-stricken housing project in Harlem, New York City. His entire family tree had been in and out of prisons.
My father was incarcerated. He did about 15 years. I was incarcerated. My grandfather was incarcerated. My great-grandfather was a slave. And my son killed somebody when he was 12 years old.
While Sheldon was the only one in his family who had functional hearing.
My mother's deaf, my father's deaf, my sister's deaf, my aunt's
deaf.
Wait, what? I grew up in a deaf household.
That's a lot.
Therefore, his father, a drug dealer, brought Sheldon along to help him translate.
Wait, how's it's deaf? Does that go like, is that generational, or is that? I didn't think that was generational, but I guess depends what it is too, I guess, actually.
Deals, and by the age of
different
12,
ways you go
Sheldon
deaf.
had joined
Just
the
like
exact
different
same
ways you
line
go
of
blind.
work.
I started selling drugs. Guy offered me an opportunity to be a lookout, and I would just stand there, and eventually I just slowly moved up the ranks. It turned me into this person that I was never meant to be.
As a result, he began to rack up charges.
Driving without a license, standing on the corner, little small petty drug cases.
And spent most of his teens in the Rikers Island prison, although it'd be after his release at the age of 21 that things went downhill badly. He'd commit 2 different armed robberies, receiving a sentence of 50 years in prison, which Josh argued was incredibly unfair, given only one person received minor injuries.
He got hit in the head with the gun right here on the side of his head, and he had 2 stitches, and they gave me 25 years for that case.
Did you hit him in the head?
No.
Regardless, prison is where Sheldon realized he had to turn his life around.
It was at that moment I really said I have to change my life. I just can't do this.
Beginning a prison journal about hope, change, and reform. In his entry letter to my younger self, it explained just because you're surrounded by violence does not mean that violence is the way to solve your problems. Sheldon,
like
2 wrongs do not make a right.
What's up?
Violence only begets violence. Learn how to respond and not react. In a different entry, he'd state, as we know, I'm currently in prison, which I've learned does one of 2 significant things to its occupants. Brings the best out of them or the worst.
I saw individuals who
to be fair, a lot of times you do see the worst. To be fair, like it didn't make a show like Undercover when they went to prisons. It was like a Hulu show. What was it? In prison? What was that? Oh, let me look it up. Give me 1 second. 60 Days In. 60 Days In. They had like regular citizens go in for 60 days and be undercover basically to see what how operations work inside the prisons, and you see like the people going in are starting to change slowly too as they're inside.
They're worse, and I saw guys who were at their best. The guys who were at their best were guys who were involved in education, post-secondary education programs.
Realizing the role model prisoners were those with an education, Sheldon spent years educating himself.
I got into
that's
school,
true.
I got my GED,
I don't
and
know.
then I
I've
went
been in
on
jail.
to obtain my bachelor's in behavioral science from Mercy. I stopped smoking weed. I stopped smoking cigarettes. I started working in the law library. I
Sounds
discovered
good.
that I
Sounds
had
like
a
he's
knack
changing his
for
whole life now.
complicated things, case law, and I was actually helping guys get out of prison.
He'd further add to his journal, I
That's
have
right.
grown dramatically
Look at
in
this. It
these
sounds like
14
he-
years, when I
good
could have
job.
easily
I'm guessing he's
withered
about to go
away.
downhill.
I've learned that I love Shakespeare,
Considering
that I
the
love
title says
acting,
30 days
that I
after.
love writing,
30
that I
days
enjoy
after.
reading philosophy, that I love reading criminal law, that I love writing legalese. Sheldon had changed his life to such an extent, BuzzFeed advocated for his release back in 2016. He became a model inmate, said David Roth, the prison
A model
social
inmate.
worker. His days were so full that he went to bed exhausted and fell asleep immediately. As a result of his good behavior, Sheldon was released after 25 years of his 50-year sentence, appearing on a
wait.
podcast called Success.
He had 50 years originally. He didn't mention that. They only mentioned he had 25 years. So he was actually in there for 50 years, but he did such a good job in prison that they let him off half the time. I didn't know that was an actual
After
thing.
lockdown, on which it implied that he'd never go back to prison.
I'm reflecting, I'm saying to myself, like, yo, I can't spend the next 50 years like this.
When he'd appear on Joe Rogan 1 month later, Sheldon again implied that he wouldn't go back to jail.
Individuals who have been shown to acquire associate's degrees and bachelor's degrees are like 92% less likely to return back to prison.
With Josh using Sheldon as an example,
I don't know
that
if that's
change
true or
was
not.
always possible.
How do you make change happen?
Good chance
He's
is
living
true.
it and
Also
making
good
it
chance
happen.
not.
Look at this beautiful mind and how he articulates himself.
He began working for the Queen's Defenders, helping troubled youth,
I'm trying to catch these kids before they fall, and I want to show them the way.
and even began to consider more formal
Alright.
education.
How do you go to that then killing someone 20 days later? Like what? It sounds like the dude was getting his life together. Everything was going good. Everything was getting better for him, and then he throws it away. Is that what happened here, basically?
Sheldon asked me, should I go to law school before we came here?
In the process, expressing his disbelief that he'd turned his life around.
I just came from the bowels of hell. 25 years in prison, and now I'm in the sky above the clouds in the heavens, headed to a destination to talk about change and to talk about all of the things that brought me to this place today.
Joe Rogan even posted a clip titled, "Sentenced to 50 years, Sheldon Johnson
That was
decided
8
to
months.
turn his
Wait,
life around."
this is a recent.
However,
That's 8 months ago.
Sheldon would make one final important claim.
But this is how fast your life can change from just one simple mistake.
It can change really fast.
This became reality only 38 days later.
He claimed that he had turned his life around after spending most of his adult life in
Hey,
prison.
Fox 5.
In fact, last year,
Doing
he
all the
started
news
working
today, I guess.
for the Queen's Public Defender's Office. Well, now he is accused of killing a man and then dismembering
Ooh.
his body.
Sheldon
Ooh,
was
that's
childhood
bad.
friends with a man named Colin Small, with whom he'd also spent over 10 years in prison. Therefore, upon Sheldon's release, Small was helping Johnson get back on his feet. However, at some point, their friendship took a turn. On the
Clearly.
6th of March 2024, police received a call from a tenant
Hey,
who lived in New York,
that's the worst thing
claiming
that's
to have
happened
heard
on.
2 gunshots from Colin Small's apartment, as well as a voice begging, "Please don't, I have a family." Police drove over to the flat and knocked on the door, only to find Sheldon Johnson inside, who claimed that Colin Small had apparently gone upstate. Well, police searched the apartment and found half of Colin Small's body, finding the
Jeez.
other half back at Sheldon's apartment, in addition to concrete and a Tyvek suit. CCTV outside Colin's apartment showed Sheldon Johnson entering and exiting, trying to conceal his identity with a range of different disguises. In
I
one of
did.
these stills, he's seen wearing the exact same jacket as he was in a
Oh
photo
my
he
God.
took for the Queen's Defenders.
Yeah.
Sheldon was therefore
Yeah, he said
arrested and
that.
charged with Colin's murder, screaming "I'm innocent" as he was placed into the cop car. Sheldon maintained this innocence all the way to court.
Yesterday, Sheldon Johnson pleaded not guilty to the charges. He had quite a few supporters inside the courtroom.
As the comments on his episode changed overnight. Imagine being locked up for being wronged by the system for over 25 years years, only to prove that the system was right.
Hey,
Amazing.
that's how
The
it
judge
is.
who gave him 50 years must feel pretty smart right now. I
bet
really
he
believed
does.
I was gonna die in prison. Well, you're not wrong, buddy. Sheldon's own father stated, "I'm surprised my son was arrested. I was shocked. He learned and studied in prison for 26 years.
Ooh.
He is a
Yeah,
good man.
that is
He
really
was doing
surprising.
work in a law office. There were no problems, but I doubt nobody was as shocked as Josh Dubin." He ended Sheldon Johnson's episode
That's
stating,
weird.
I'm very
Honestly.
thoughtful in who I bring on.
It's really weird that happened. Like what happened? That we probably never know this, but what happened? Like, why? Like, you're doing so good. You like, what? You're out there. You're out of there for like 2 or 3 months, and you got right back in. Like, there's a reason why you're in jail then.
I think this was one of the best ones yet.
but is still yet to talk publicly since Sheldon's new allegations. Joe, on the other hand, talked about it recently.
He was guilty before, and we knew he was guilty, but he got 50 years.
Right.
And then he was talking about he turned his life around this like a month after he was on the podcast. Cut some dude's head off. Homie didn't understand new HD security cameras.
Theorizing that
that's
prison
true.
had only made
That's true, dude. He was in there for 25 years. He doesn't know about these new cameras. This new he doesn't know about this. Like he doesn't know image looks this good. Basically, that's actually a really good point he makes. Like a really, really good point.
him worse.
Was that because he spent 25 fucking years in jail, which is an insane amount of time to be locked up in a prison, and then
He makes a actually.
expect
I give him that. He made a really, really good point about that. He was in jail for 25 years. He got out of jail. We don't know what he's done. Before he got in jail. He maybe done more. Maybe he did less. I don't know. But he doesn't know about the cameras. He doesn't know about new technology too much. He probably never seen an iPhone before. Who knows? Like that was 1999. He probably got in jail, right? Maybe something like that. So yeah, that's before any of this. Like atmosphere changes. Like I played Yakuza Like a Dragon, and you can see it before and after you get out. Like before you go into jail as Ichiban, and after you get out of jail as Ichiban. There's a big difference. There's a big difference. It's not the same thing. Technology changed. The dude didn't know how to use a phone because he was in the jail for 20 years.